Are the Toronto Maple Leafs seriously considering trading for Pavel Buchnevich, a 29-year-old winger who's struggling with only 6 points in 14 games, carrying an $8 million cap hit for the next 6 years? Or is this just another example of Toronto chasing a buy low opportunity that could turn into a long-term albatross contract that cripples their salary cap flexibility? All right, folks, let's dive into the latest explosive rumor to hit Leafs Nation. Pavel Buchnevich, the $8 million per year winger from the St. Louis Blues, is reportedly in the center of trade speculation, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are keeping a close eye on the possibility of acquiring him amid the chaos that has engulfed the Blues roster. This is a fascinating high-risk, high-reward scenario that could either be a stroke of genius or a catastrophic mistake. Let's break down every angle of this potential blockbuster, examine the connection with Craig Berube, analyze the fit, and most importantly, determine whether this is a kind of gamble that Toronto should be taking. Let's start with the player himself and the current situation in St. Louis. Pavel Buchnevich is a 29-year-old winger who has been a solid, consistent offensive contributor throughout his NHL career. He's capable of scoring 20-plus goals and putting up 50 to 60 points in a season. Last season with the Blues, he recorded 20 goals and 57 points in 77 games. That's respectable production from a top 6 forward. However, this season has been a disaster. Through 14 games, Buchnevich has registered only 6 points, and his inconsistent play has led to growing frustration among Blues fans and management. The article points out that this fan discontent and Buchnevich's struggles could force the Blues GM to consider trading a player who was previously considered part of the core. This is where the buy low opportunity emerges. When a talented player is struggling, when his value is temporarily depressed due to poor performance or team chaos, that's when savvy general managers can swoop in and acquire him at a discounted price. The question is Buchnevich's current slump a temporary blip, or is it a sign of a deeper decline? That's the million-dollar question, and it's a gamble that Toronto will be taking if they pursue this trade. Now, let's talk about the secret weapon that could make this trade happen, Craig Berube. The current head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs was the head coach in St. Louis when Buchnevich was playing there, and they have an established relationship. This connection between coach and player could be the decisive factor in a potential trade, according to insiders. Berube knows Buchnevich's game intimately. He understands his strengths and weaknesses, and he knows how to get the best out of him. If Berube believes he can unlock Buchnevich's potential and restore him to his previous form, that endorsement could be enough to convince Brad Treliving to pull the trigger. The analysis states, Buchnevich could be a high-potential reclamation project for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Craig Berube has a connection with Buchnevich, having coached the Russian in St. Louis, and that could be the impact factor in a potential negotiation. At his best, Buchnevich is a 60 to 70 point player, and he's the type of talent the Leafs need for the top 6. That's the optimistic view, and it's compelling if Buchnevich can return to his previous form. If he can rediscover his scoring touch and his offensive creativity, he would be a massive addition to Toronto's top 6. He could play alongside Auston Matthews or John Tavares, providing the kind of reliable, two-way scoring that the Leafs have been searching for. His ability to play both wings gives the coaching staff flexibility, and his experience and skill set will be valuable assets. However, and this is a massive however, the risks are enormous. Let's break down the challenges. 1. The contract. Buchnevich is in the first year of a 6-year contract extension with a cap hit of $8 million per season. That's a substantial financial commitment, and it extends through 2030. For a team like Toronto that's already operating with minimal cap flexibility, taking on that contract will require significant salary cap gymnastics. They would need to move out substantial salary to create the necessary cap space, potentially sacrificing other valuable roster players or prospects. 2. The no-move clause. Buchnevich possesses a no-move clause in his contract, which means he has complete control over his destination. He would need to agree to waive that clause to be traded to Toronto. While the connection with Craig Berube could be a persuasive factor, there's no guarantee that Buchnevich would be willing to leave St. Louis, especially if he believes the team's struggles are temporary. 3. The performance risk. Buchnevich is currently struggling, and there's a real possibility that his decline is not just a temporary slump, but a sign of a deeper regression. He's 29 years old, not exactly a young player with untapped potential. If Toronto acquires him, and he continues to struggle, they would be stuck with an $8 million contract for the next 6 years, severely limiting their ability to make other moves and build a competitive roster. The article correctly identifies the best case and worst case scenarios. Best case, Buchnevich returns to his previous form and becomes a success alongside Auston Matthews or William Nylander, providing consistent top 6 scoring and helping the Leafs compete for a Stanley Cup. Worst case, the team gets stuck with a declining player on an $8 million contract, crippling their salary cap flexibility and preventing them from making other necessary moves. Here's my strong opinion, Leafs Nation. This is an incredibly risky gamble, and I'm not convinced it's the right move for Toronto. While the connection with Craig Berube is intriguing, and the potential upside is appealing, the downside is catastrophic. $8 million per year for 6 years is a massive commitment for a player who is currently struggling and who is approaching 30 years old. If Buchnevich doesn't bounce back, if he continues to decline, Toronto will be handcuffed by his contract for foreseeable future. The Leafs need to be smart, calculated, and strategic in their approach. They should not be chasing buy low opportunities on players with massive long-term contracts unless they have absolute confidence that the player can return to elite form. Brad Treliving needs to ask himself, is Pavel Buchnevich truly the missing piece that will push this team over the top? Or is he a risky gamble that could blow up in their faces? The chaos in St. Louis, which also includes potential trades involving Jordan Kyrou, does create opportunities for teams to acquire talented players at discounted prices. But Toronto needs to be extremely careful not to fall into the trap of acquiring another team's problems. They need to focus on proven, reliable talent who can contribute immediately without the massive risk of long-term contract complications. If the Blues are willing to retain a significant portion of Buchnevich's salary, say 50%, and if Toronto can acquire him for a minimal cost in terms of prospects and picks, then maybe it's worth exploring. But if St. Louis is demanding a premium return and expecting Toronto to take on the full cap hit, then Treliving should walk away. The risk is simply too high. The conclusion states, the acquisition of Pavel Buchnevich will be the riskiest and potentially most rewarding move the Maple Leafs could make on offense. I agree with the first part. It's incredibly risky, but I'm not convinced it's the most rewarding. There are other targets out there, other players who could provide the offensive help Toronto needs without the massive long-term commitment and the significant performance risk. What do you think, Leafs Nation? Should Brad Treliving pursue Pavel Buchnevich despite his current struggles and his massive long-term contract? Does a connection with Craig Berube make this a worthwhile gamble? Or should Toronto be looking for more reliable, less risky options to fill their top 6 needs? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear all your perspectives on this incredibly controversial potential trade. And if you want to stay on top of every trade rumor, every risky gamble, and every breaking news story as the NHL season unfolds, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. We'll be here breaking down every significant development, and you won't want to miss a single update as we continue to chase that ultimate prize.